A foreign group of homosexual activists attempt to get around the United States Constitution and sue an American pastor using international law in a Massachusetts federal court. I'm Matt Barber, Vice President of Liberty Counsel Action, and joining me again in studio today is Harry Mihet, Senior Litigation Counsel with Liberty Counsel. And Harry, you're working on this case. The pastor is a friend of mine. His name is Scott Lively, a devout Christian man who is courageously stands up in defense of the biblical model of human sexuality and speaks out against radical homosexual activism, both here in the United States and abroad. He has done that in Uganda. A group of homosexual activists called Sexual Minorities of Uganda have, I think, filed a frivolous, frankly, lawsuit against Mr. Lively in order to try to silence him. This is a tactic we've become very familiar with homosexual activists, trying to silence all dissent and anybody who disagrees. But you're working on this case. I know I've summed it up a little bit, but tell us where the case is going right now and give us a little more background on it.
Well, Matt, in 2009, Scott Lively was invited to go to Uganda and to speak to some of the leaders of the Christian community there about homosexuality and about the biblical approach to the problem of homosexuality. And he did so in full exercise of his First Amendment right as an American citizen. He went there and had a couple of days of seminars with various leaders. And came back to this country, continued his good work, and is now the defendant in a lawsuit in federal court in Massachusetts, a United States court, brought by this group, Sexual Minorities Uganda, which calls itself SMUG. And SMUG alleges that when Scott Lively was in Uganda and preached the biblical view of homosexuality, he committed crimes against humanity of persecution. And as such, he is liable as essentially a war criminal might be. And there is this law in the United States called the Alien Tort Statute that was passed specifically to allow war criminals to be tried for their crimes against humanity. But now this particular group, represented by a George Soros-funded law firm, the Center for Constitutional Rights, is trying to use the same law to essentially not only muzzle this type of speech that they do not like, but also to punish it. They're asking for money damages against Scott Lively.
They're trying to ruin this man for exercising his First Amendment guaranteed liberties, for merely preaching the gospel, preaching the truth about the pitfalls associated with the homosexual lifestyle, about radical political activism, the goals of the international homosexual activist lobby, and they want to silence him for this. Aren't they really sending a shot over the bow for anybody else who might dare to speak truth about homosexuality?
Well, absolutely. And this group knows very well that if they would have sued Scott Lively for something that he did in the United States, or I should say something he said in the United States, they would be laughed out of court because the First Amendment right gives us the right to speak our mind in the public square, even when George Soros doesn't agree with us. They also know that if they were to sue him in Uganda for what transpired and what he said in Uganda, they would be laughed out of court there. What they're trying to do here is to come to the U.S. and say, when you were in Uganda, you broke international law, and somehow international law is superior to the United States Constitution and the First Amendment. That's the crux of their complaint. So this lawsuit is an outrage and should worry every freedom-loving American that somehow their guarantees as a United States citizen might become subservient to what some judge in Sweden or Norway thinks ought to be the norm.
So this is much bigger than just bullying tactics and an abuse of our judicial system by homosexual activists. This is an example of where these radical George Soros-type progressives have U.S. sovereignty squarely in the crosshairs here. They're challenging U.S. sovereignty here, aren't they?
Absolutely. And think about it. If Scott Lively could somehow be held liable for speaking in Uganda on homosexuality, the next step will be to go after any U.S. pastor speaking in the U.S. with maybe an internet ministry or a radio ministry or a television ministry and say, hey, I heard so-and-so in Sweden talk about homosexuality and he persecuted me and he is liable to me as a war criminal in a United States court, and I get to have $1 million judgment against him. It's just an outrageous tactic, but that is exactly what these groups are up to.
This is frightening, and not only that, but they are misrepresenting the facts as well. This lawsuit has alleged that Scott Lively in some way defended the idea of capital punishment for homosexuals. He has categorically, over and again, spoken out against the death penalty for homosexuals, if you will. He has spoken out against any kind of violence against anyone for any reason. They also allege that a homosexual activist there by the name of David Cato, that Lively's speech while he was in Uganda somehow resulted in Cato being murdered. They paint this as a hate crime, a gay bash, that somebody killed Cato because of Lively's speech. That couldn't be further from the truth, could it?
No, that's the principal, the culmination of their 47-page complaint in federal court is that somehow his speech in Uganda incited and fanned the flames of hatred and caused people to do violence to homosexuals. And they say, as Exhibit A, is this Cato person.
Who killed Cato?
Well, there's a person sitting in jail now because he confessed to bludgeoning Cato to death because he was the perpetrator was a homosexual prostitute whom Cato hired and failed to pay for his services. This person confessed, was tried, convicted, and is being punished for his crime under Ugandan law, but none of that appears in this complaint. They want to lay that crime at the feet of Scott Lively.
That just illustrates how dishonest and disingenuous these homosexual activists can be. These radical homosexual activists here, they're just lying. They are flatly lying. They're creating a false narrative in order to try to paint this picture of Scott Lively, as you mentioned, inciting violence, inciting hate in Uganda, and defending and advocating the death penalty for homosexuals. The facts couldn't be further from the truth. But that homosexual activists never let facts get in the way.
Well, they don't let facts in the way. They don't let the law get in the way too. Because ironically, the people that are perpetrating violence here are the homosexual activists against Scott Lively. I mean, this man has had bricks thrown into buildings and bomb threats and death threats. He's become anathema to the homosexual lobby. They're the ones perpetrating violence against him, and yet they are accusing him of these things that never took place.
Well, he is to be commended for his courage, for his bravery. He really is a hero, frankly, for the stand that he is taking. And Scott refuses to back down, and he is really doing kingdom's work here and serving God, and he's doing so bravely, and I think is a credit to his ministry and to those of us who are trying to defend the Judeo-Christian model relative to human sexuality.
That's right, and that's exactly why we decided to step into this case, Liberty Counsel, and pick this up as one of our priority cases, because we understand what is at stake here. Not only the defense of a good man and his reputation, but also the right of any American to speak their conscience on an issue on which the Bible has to say much, but on an issue in which it has become so perilous to speak nowadays. Truth has become the new hate speech, and we see that more and more happening in this country, and we see it now with groups that are trying to import these international norms into the United States.
Well, Harry, thanks for everything you're doing on this case and defending Mr. Lively. And folks, it's generous gifts from people like you that enables Liberty Counsel to go out and defend freedom, to defend liberty, to defend the Constitution, to defend people who are under attack by the radical left, like Scott Lively. Give Liberty Counsel a call, 1-800-671-1776, or go to lc.org. Ask for Same-Sex Marriage, Putting Every Household at Risk, a book by Matt Staver, chairman and founder of Liberty Counsel, gets into some of these issues, just what a true threat we face right now as a nation, threats to our freedoms. Go to lc.org or give us a call, 800-671-1776. Stand with Liberty Counsel today.